the big shift that is happening from Industry 4.0 to Industry 5.0. For this, just a short heads up, we will not have a Q&A session afterwards. However, if you have any questions you would like to ask our speakers, feel free to send in your questions in the chat box, as you have been using up until now, and we will forward these questions to our speakers so that they can respond them. Okay? So, with this being said, let me introduce you to Ángel Buendia, Knowledge Manager at SciLife, who will be moderating this session and will introduce you to the speakers. So, Ángel, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
So hello everyone, and welcome to this exciting roundtable discussion. It is part of the Smart Quality Summit 2024, and I'm really thrilled to have you here as we continue our exploration about the future of quality in the life sciences. And today's topic, and the evolution from Industry 4.0 to Industry 5.0, marks a major shift in how we approach the integration of technology and also with human values. Okay, so as you know from the other sessions, Industry 4.0 revolutionized our operations with automation, with artificial intelligence, with digital transformation, creating more efficient systems. But now we are entering a new era where technology is used to empower three main pillars. One is human centricity, the second one is sustainability, and the third one is resiliency. And during today's discussion, we'll talk about how life sciences companies can take advantage of this shift. So to expand this, I'm pleased to introduce three experts in the field. Our first speaker is Karen Taylor. Karen founded Deloitte UK's Centre for Health and Solutions in 2011, and she focuses on delivering research and insights in life sciences and healthcare. Our second speaker is Leslie Worthington. Leslie brings about more than 20 years of experience in quality and regulatory affairs, along with degrees in psychology and also in law. And she's also an executive communicator, worked with leaders, coaching them for principally quality professionals. And then we have the third speaker is Harsh Thakkar. He is the CEO of Cultivate, and Harsh leads a consultancy that empowers life sciences organizations to elevate their quality management maturity, to ensure regulatory compliance, and also to deploy innovative technology solutions. All right, so thank you very much for being here, both of you, and I hope you are okay with this discussion session, and let's hope we get a lot of insights for our audience. Okay. All right, so let's get started. Yeah. If you want to present yourselves a little bit, how are you today, Karen, Harsh, and Leslie?
We're good.
Doing great.
So shall I start? Shall I do a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure.
Hi,
Okay.
as has already mentioned, I lead Deloitte's Centre for Health Solutions in the UK. We do research across Europe and globally, but we also look into life sciences and healthcare. And clearly technology is seen as a really important aspect of improving efficiency, cost effectiveness, and also the quality of care that is being delivered around the world. And so I'm looking forward to discussing this and using some of the research publications we've produced to help illustrate some of the answers and discussion we have.
Great, thank you, Karen. And Leslie and Harsh?
Yeah,
I'm Leslie Worthington. Thanks for the introduction, Angel. I'm in Toronto, Canada, and I'm sort of at the other end of the spectrum from Karen in terms of I focus very much on communication and leadership skills. I'm an executive coach working with predominantly quality people, so I'm going to be approaching this discussion from the perspective of how are we going to communicate about this stuff.
Great, excellent. Thank you, Leslie. Harsh, it's your turn.
Yeah.
now.
Thank you, Angel. Super excited to be here, part of this discussion. And at Cultivate, we are helping some of the life science startups with all their quality, compliance, technology, and data management consulting needs. And since we started in past 2 years, we've got a chance to work with some enterprise and life science startups on implementing AI, machine learning, and no-code solutions, or just defining their strategy and doing some proof of concept. So when I got this invitation, I was super excited to bring all those takeaways and come here and have a great discussion. So looking forward to it.
All right, brilliant. Thank you very much, all of you. So let's get started with the discussion, right? Okay, so, but to begin with, what exactly does Industry 5.0 mean for us, for the life sciences industry? I will just make a very short introduction. As its core, Industry 5.0 is not just about adopting new technologies, okay? It's more than that. It's about aligning those technologies with human-centric goals to ensure that we are not only more productive, but also, let's say, more sustainable, and at the end, we need to be more adaptable to future challenges in the industry. So there are three main pillars. We have the human centricity, that it is about the collaboration between humans and machines, basically. We have also sustainability. Sustainability, these days increasingly is at the heart of all we do in the industry. The Industry 5.0 promotes new business models, much more than only manufacturing in the traditional ways. It means that we have to take care of the environmental impact, but also we want to restore it, okay? So this is more than that. This is not only for business, it is for the sake of our society at the end. And the third pillar is resiliency. Resiliency, it's about adaptability, and it became very important after the pandemic of the COVID-19, where there were disruptions in some medicinal products, disruptions in the supply chains. So we are going to talk also about this topic today. All right. So to start with the first topic, let's focus our discussions in human centricity. How important is the way we communicate with our people? And what are the strategies we have to use to communicate with our team members, to educate them, and also to give them training about best practices in Industry 5.0?
Well, I have
To
lots to say on this topic, obviously. So for the sake of clarity, I just want to give my 10-second perspective on what Industry 5.0 is all about. It's basically about how we can make sure industry serves society, making sure it's human-centric, resilient, and sustainable, those three pillars. It's sort of a shift from growth and profits as the focus of business to society, the planet, and well-being as the focus. That's my little snippet takeaway. It's like Industry 5.0 is bringing humans back and placing humans back in business, back in industry, back in the center of technological advancements. It's like we got ahead of ourselves a little bit and we got all excited about technology, and then we went, oh, wait, people haven't left the equation yet, right? People are still part of the equation. So really, I think one of the things we forget most often is the basics. Before we rush off and talk about all the details of this human-centric, sustainable, resilient approach of Industry 5.0 or even what Industry 5.0 is? Do people understand what we're talking about? We love buzzwords. To me, all three of those terms are buzzwords in the sense that they could mean something different to everyone who uses them or hears them. Human-centric, sustainable, resilient. What do we mean? And do we use and understand these terms in the same way? So I really think it's critical to first make sure everyone's on the same page. And to me, that's sort of the education and communication piece. That's what that's all about. We need to help our people know what these terms mean, what they mean to our industry, what they mean to our company, what they mean to the individuals in our organizations. Like, what does human-centric look like for us? What does sustainable look like for us? What does resilient look like for us? How do all of these concepts inform our behaviors, our products, our delivery, and how we support our customers? We can't make these concepts, if we can't make these concepts relevant so that they resonate with the people, they're just going to go in one ear and out the other. So if anything, really, I think communication is even more critical now than it ever has been. And I think education and training are just different forms of communication, ultimately. Education I see as helping people understand the big picture, the what and the why. And training is about showing them how to use it. And I think with training, the biggest thing now with this Industry 5.0 is to be mindful of, not only do we have to make sure that when we train on the technology, whether it's our employees or whether it's, we have to make sure it's easy for them to understand and remember what we're teaching them. But possibly an even bigger challenge is that we have to stay current. The pace of change in this area is astounding. And we're gonna have to make sure that we have people dedicated to staying on top of the advances in technology, and then people who can stay on top of passing on that knowledge. Our training literally could be obsolete in 3 months or maybe even 3 weeks, right? And so we've got to monitor this and stay relevant. And if we can't train people on all of this fabulous, mind-blowing technology, then the fabulous, mind-blowing technology isn't particularly fabulous or mind-blowing anymore, right? It's like having a technically brilliant procedure that no one can read. It might as well not exist. So, ultimately, it's about information. And information is good, and more information is better, but only if people are trained how to use it. And so the ability to communicate and educate and train, I think it will be the crux of making sure that we get the most out of these advancements. That's how I see the communication piece in all of this.
Great. So, I understand your point, but what are the best strategies we can use to balance those three elements about communication, education, and training?
The strategies are just, I don't even think we need to separate out those things, other than the training is more the how to do things. But I think the strategies are to keep it simple, to make sure that how you're communicating, what you're training people on, and how you're educating them resonates with people. They have to understand the words you're using, the terms you're using, how it's relevant to them in what they do in their job. Because if we miss the mark on that, they're going to miss the entire point of what it's all about. So to me, it comes down to the language you use and knowing who you're speaking to.
Right. So can we take advantage of the current technologies such as AI, generative AI, advanced technologies? How can we take the most of it to get those strategies to accomplish that and to reach our people with this new shift, with this new concept?
Well, AI is magic to me, right? It's like, whoa. And so we can collect data. We can find out, what do people know? What do they not know when they're actually doing their task? Where do they mess up? And we can collect this, and this can help us inform where the gaps are in our training, what we thought we trained well on, but obviously we didn't, because people are routinely messing up in one particular idea. So we can use this information to help us gear our training more, make it more personalized, for sure. So that's, I think, probably in terms of communication, that's probably one of the most obvious uses in ways we can do this.
Yeah, the training and education aspect is probably one of the most exciting areas within life sciences, quality and regulatory, that I feel has really needs to change, and I think AI is going to do that. Uh, so if you look at training today, it's pretty much a one size fits all approach. Companies have SOPs, policies, slide decks. Maybe they have some speakers who come and train, and everybody signs off and says they've done the training, and then they go and do their job, right? That's 99% of trainings are like that. Maybe there are some outliers, but with AI, as Leslie was pointing out, is we are going to see micro learnings, which means smaller bursts of learnings. Just like we've seen with video, we have 160-second clips, but we also have long form videos. We are going to see that smaller clips or smaller bursts of training materials. And also we're going to see them not once a month or once 3 months or once 6 months, when your company's training curriculum says you need to go and sign and do the training, but actually when you're doing that task. So if I do a task, let's say my job is to write a kappa or write a deviation, and maybe I do learn the SOP and learn how to do that, but while I'm filling out the information, maybe I forget something. I'm human, I can make mistakes. The AI is constantly analyzing that data and saying, hey, you wrote these 3 sentences for your kappa description. I think you could do better. I think you could probably write why this event happened, or you could probably describe, what are some of the reasons this event happened. Right now, there's nobody telling the person at that point. They're just writing, they review it. The reviewer says, no, this is not good, go back, they do it again, right? So I think the center is on the worker, the center is on the employee or the person that is doing that task. And that's the goal of Industry 5.0, is to, as we've been saying since the start of this discussion, how can a human and a technology coexist? So the notion that AI is going to take my job, yes, that's true in some cases. And if it's just boring administrative work, then why would you want to even do it? Like, let just AI do it, right? That's good for you. But that also means that now your job becomes more interesting, because the way you work is going to change as more and more technology gets embedded into it.
I think we have to think more closely about what it is that the life sciences companies are doing, and take the pharma industry producing drugs for patients that will help make them better, we hope. But there is a really complex value chain where technology can help speed up drug discovery, help you select patients for clinical trials, help you monitor patients in clinical trials, all the while trying to get to the regulatory process where the drugs are approved for use in patients quicker, so that drug gets to market quicker, because many of these drugs that are in development are for things that aren't currently treated, or could improve the treatment that is available. So you've got that synergy between technology to speed up, to help, to take out, as you say, help them produce their submissions to regulators, help regulators review the submissions more quickly, help them actually identify better drug targets in the first place. So you've got that technology support for that, but none of it can be done without the human in the loop, who has to bring in that sense of reality, and who communicates either with the scientists or who actually communicates with the patients, explaining why it's important for them to comply with the clinical trial, to stay on the trial, and all those things right the way through to the final end product, where patients want to know why they've been prescribed a drug, how it's going to make them feel. Technology can't do that. You need that human in the loop. So I sort of see it as a synergy between them. Now, whether it's called Industry 5.0, 5.0 seems to suggest it's very much a technical technology issue. And so actually communicating what it means and why human centricity is so important, patient centricity should be in mind in designing everything in the first place, is really critical. But I do think that we need to think about the use of the word Industry 5.0, because it doesn't immediately make me think of centricity.
Yeah. And another way to think about this is think about being on an airplane, right? You have the pilot and the co-pilot, and one could argue that their main responsibility is to get all the passengers from destination A to destination B safely and on time. I'm sure there's other things you can tell that's their job, but that's their ultimate job. So I'm sure they're clicking. I've never been inside a cockpit, so I'm sure they're clicking tons of buttons. They have tons of data about how the plane is doing or what's the wind pressure and whatnot. But the ultimate responsibility of taking that plane off from destination A and landing in destination B is still on the pilot. And if something happens to the pilot, there is a co-pilot to, take that backup position. So the human is always going to be there. And a lot of these other signals and noises around, AI is going to help process that data so that the human ultimately can make a quick decision. And I think that's how I look about it.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. The co-pilot can just step in and, override if the machine's not working.
Yep.
Yeah, great analogy.
Absolutely. Yeah, this issue about the mixture, the combination between human and technology is really so important that they have to live between them. So most strategies now, the companies have to take care about their people, their quality culture. We have here Leslie. You are an expert in this issue and how important it is to have everyone on board on quality and also on using the right technologies to be not just more productive, but also what the Industry 5.0 is highlighting is that sustainability and also resiliency. So probably now, what about if we talk about resiliency as the second pillar of the Industry 4.0? You know that resiliency is another key aspect in this new shift. And you know that the continuity of the criticality of the medical supplies and also medicinal products is really important. And as I commented before, after the disruption of the supply chain during the pandemic of the COVID-19, some strategies started in the world, mostly in Europe, about how to reinforce this resiliency in the industry. So how can we use in the life sciences, how can we use the new technologies, AI, blockchain, we also have digital twins, how can we help these technologies, how can we use them to build more resilient supply chains so as to continue with the supply of critical medications to our patients?
I think you're absolutely right. The pandemic brought to the fore the lack of resilience that has developed in many of the supply chains, and that's because as medicine has become more complex, more innovative. I mean, it's changing all the time. Our knowledge of what works and what doesn't is changing. So has the supply chain become more complex. The sourcing of the ingredients that go into making a medicinal product That could be a really long supply chain in getting it from source to a manufacturing plant to then into the supply chain and back out to the patients ultimately who are going to be using them. So the complexity of that supply chain has become increasingly more complex as we've gone through the different types of therapies that are being developed. And you've got everything from sort of your generic drugs through to cell and gene therapies, where the supply chain for that is very, very different to what it is to produce a generic drug. So the pharma companies have to contend with these different complexities of supply chains, and technology gives them the opportunity to create, particularly artificial intelligence, end-to-end visibility of their supply chain, to use things like there's vast amount of information generated at all steps and stages of the supply chain, but much of that information traditionally has not been used. What we can do with artificial intelligence is and robotic process automation is to collect all that data and to be able to analyze it, to be able to see where the vulnerabilities are in the supply chain, to take action, early action to intervene before it becomes a crisis, to look at everything from your manufacturing through to transport, through to delivery. Where are the risks? Model those risks through things like digital twins. Look at the whether or not the manufacturing plant, where there's a risk of it breaking down, how to actually maintain it properly. All of those things can be done using really strong data analyzed by artificial intelligence, but with the human, again, back in that loop, who understands where these vulnerabilities are and can translate the data into actions. But that end-to-end visibility of digital supply networks is really where we can transform the resilience of supply chains.
Yeah, and to add to what Karen said, about cell and gene therapy and how it's different from other types of therapeutics. Within cell and gene therapy, the chain of identity and the chain of custody is extremely important, because in many cases, you are not making a drug product or a lot that's going out to hundreds of patients. It's going out to one patient. It's their blood or some other type of tissue or cells that are engineered and sent back to them, and the risk reward ratio is completely different, because if that person doesn't get the drug at the right time, they're not going to make it, because they're probably having some serious conditions that are unmet needs for which the cell therapy is being created. So Karen mentioned a lot of interesting points, and I think they're all important. We weren't really talking about doing assessments on the entire end-to-end supply chain process and finding where those vulnerabilities are, but we're doing a lot of that now after COVID, because it was a wake-up call. And also, I think technology is going to come in and create more transparent sharing of information across the board. So upstream all the way up to downstream, your entire supply chain. If you can get all that data into, using technology, all the right data points, so that every step of the way, all your suppliers, the manufacturer, the regulators, everybody is aware of what's happening. Because then if you have a natural disaster, like right now in North Carolina, there's hurricanes going in Western North Carolina, stuff like that happens, which you can't really plan for. But if you have all the right data, you can make a decision and have a workaround to navigate that natural disaster.
Yeah, I think this area the potential is unbelievable in this area, and I just want to expand on Karen's point about, like, yes, humans are needed. They have to be able to understand and leverage this information and this data and use it properly. But even more practically than that, when we're talking about a supply chain, we're talking about a chain, and if there's a break in any of the links in the chain is broken. And if you think about all the links as being relationships, then it's like, oh, right, because ultimately we have to have these relationships with our suppliers. Most of us want to work with people we trust, or companies that we trust. And we trust people we know. And we know people we have relationships with. And we build relationships through good communication. So we can't ever really get away from this human element. And the other thing is, the reality is that most of us are going to be dealing with a wide range of suppliers. Like Karen said, there's just, this chain is just so long and complex and winds around the globe a couple of times, possibly. And we have to make sure that we help them understand what Industry 5.0 is, right? And because we want all of us to be understanding this if we're going to be doing this, right? We want this resilient supply chain means we're going to need everyone that we're working with to understand what we're talking about when we say resilient supply chain. And we've got to have that communication open. We might be tasked with bringing them up to speed on what Industry 5.0 is and helping them see how it can help them manage risk and keep things running smoothly. And so it's almost like we're going to have the communication skills to influence them and sell it to them potentially. So I think that's the human bit again, right back into this resilient bit. You can't separate them.
No, absolutely. And every individual across the supply chain who is doing their part needs to understand the balance between what their role is versus the automation versus the information that's available. I think Harsh mentioned the sort of chain of identity, chain of custody for cell and gene therapy, which, as you say, is pretty unique and actually very, very, very challenging to be able to maintain, and to be able to maintain it in a cost-effective way. But chain of custody and chain of identity is really important for any of the drugs that are in the supply chain, so that people know that if it's prescribed and a patient's taking it, that chain of custody has protected the ingredients in that drug, and they can trust what's in it, or trust what it says on the packet. And so educating and training everyone across the whole supply chain about those steps is also critical. So it is an important synergy that we're talking about here. A lot of focus, though, at the moment, I'd say, is on the digitalization side. And yes, training people in learning how to use the technologies, but understanding that ultimately the destination for the products that are being produced is a patient and also a clinician. And if a clinician has any doubts about any of the things we've talked about in terms of resilience, then they're not going to prescribe it. So it's a long chain of education and training as well as anything else.
Yeah. And also to add there, it's not, there's also the other side of not just getting the drug to the patient, but what happens if there's a product recall? You have to now collect that data and get it back, right? So there's like the other side also. It's not just one way. You have to have end-to-end and two ways of information sharing.
Absolutely.
And knowledge.
Yeah. This is very aligned with the sustainability concept, because in the supply chain, medicinal products and medical devices are produced all over the world, and they are exported to all the countries in the globe. So it's challenging to say that all the movements of medicinal products, medical devices, APIs, and so on are we taking enough care of our planet? So what are the best sustainability practices? You know that in the United Nations there are about 17 sustainability development goals, and we have a target and agenda for the 2030 that many countries and then also companies have to take and plan actions to reduce the carbon footprint and many other initiatives. So how can we connect those sustainability development goals with the third pillar of Industry 5.0, which is sustainability?
I'll start. Sustainability cuts across most of the SDGs, And so whether it's the sustainability of the health workforce or whatever of the SDGs you look through, sustainability is critical. For me, what's really important and has become much more evident is the fact that, the health of the planet is inextricably linked to the health of the population and in turn to the health of the economy. And if any of those bits fall down, then you have a lack of sustainability of survival, really. So I think one of the challenges for healthcare and for life sciences is that they are both emitters of high levels of greenhouse gases, but also the impact of that adds to the demands on them in terms of the health of the population. So understanding that link is really important, and it does show that everybody has a role to play in improving sustainability. And there's lots of things you can do across the whole supply chain to improve the sustainability of medicines. But there's also a lot you can do in addressing the waste that we know exists, and people not having access to medicines, or if they do, not using them properly, not adhering to medicines. So there's everything from the very beginning of how you run your laboratories and the carbon footprint of a laboratory, right the way through to how you ensure that the products are not wasted and are used. And so many touch points along that supply chain, value chain, however you want to describe it, where sustainability is important and needs to be tackled.
Yeah, the sustainability component really is inseparable from the human-centric component, in my view, in a way, right? The concerns in terms of the sustainability development goals are essentially concerns about being a human on the planet. Like, that's what it comes down to. So we need to start having these conversations. It's about humanity. And so we have to make sure, like, humanity becomes part of the culture and mindset of our workforces, so that this is top of mind for people. And I think as the next generation comes into the workforce, it is sort of naturally front of mind for that next generation. They're like in there to fix what we messed up. So, but I think that we have to be intentional as businesses to make sure that we are having these discussions. And the way Karen explained, everything's so interconnected, like, help people understand all of this. And I think that's where the role of communication is gonna, be really important. The other thing is to get to, if we're all aiming for net zero at some point, the only way that's going to happen is if we collaborate with our competitors in most cases, right? And so we need to have the skills to be able to have the kind of conversations we need. We have to have transparency. We have to have exceptional communication skills. We have to trust each other. And again, this comes down to those people skills. And so even though this is Industry 5.0, like, it seems like this technological thing, it's not. It is in a certain sense, but it's the people part has to be working for the technology part to be working.
Yeah, what's interesting to me about sustainability is that, we're obviously seeing, especially where I live in North Carolina, there's tons of new biotech and life science facilities, whether it's companies or CDMOs and all kinds of construction going on, maybe 20 miles from where I live. So we're already seeing that the way these facilities are designed, all the basic utilities, the light, the water, everything that they're using, they're already thinking about sustainability from day one. Maybe 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. Some companies were doing it, but others were not. So that's becoming more and more easier. The factories that have been built 20, 30 years ago, it's really hard to tear them down and, reconstruct them. So even if they want to be sustainable, it's a really hard push to do that. But for the newer ones, they are already crunching the numbers and saying, okay, does this sustainability effort reduce my cost of operating this facility? And how many times am I going to operate this equipment, or how many gallons of water am I going to use? So they're already having these discussions because, and that shows that they care about it, and they're going to make whatever reasonable efforts to design that facility. And then also the other thing that I'm really excited about is that sustainability is also giving the opportunity for a lot of new startups and companies to emerge and help life science companies. So, one example, I talked to a founder on my podcast, and he basically has a company in Germany that's maybe one of the few or the first ones in the world that's designing plant based lab materials, right? So his company has got some really good awards, and he's presented all these materials. Sure, there is a pushback from the life science community that is still wants to use glass materials because they don't trust the plant-based labware, but at least it's there, right? It's a new concept, it's a new company, and it's there for people that want to use it. And I feel like there's going to be more examples like this coming up, and new companies emerging that will also, help the life science industry be more sustainable.
I think you're right, and in our research, we've come across a number of really innovative companies who are both taking the technology, the AI-enabled technologies, to be able to understand where the problem areas are in terms of, if you look at a lab, where are the high intensity uses of energy? Where is the waste being produced? What are the temperatures that you really do need to run your laboratories at? And using that to be able to reduce the general footprint. As you say, also building new. I think it's great when you can build new, and we see some very impressive new buildings going up that have got are sustainable by design. They've had sustainability built throughout it and use green energy, etc. But you have got a lot of buildings that aren't, warehouses that aren't built with that in mind. But the other area that I just wanted to mention is the products themselves, the drugs themselves. Many of the medicines that are in the market were not developed with thinking about environmental sustainability, and so they have to be. You have to look at different ways of how you can reduce the carbon footprint of those medicines. But we are seeing lots of medicines now being developed with that in mind. Even the point I mentioned at the beginning about using AI in drug discovery, that in itself is a more sustainable way of trying to identify products that you can source the ingredients from places that are more sustainable. You can do it more quickly, so you're not using as long in that production process. So there are lots of ways, but I've just come back to Leslie here. One of the things we see more than anything is people choosing which companies to work for, and pharma is no different than medtech or any other business, because they have got a sustainable practice, a sustainable mentality, and that is helping them choose. And your second point, Leslie, also is that no company can do this on their own. If you just think about that complex supply chain we've already talked about, many of the companies use the same suppliers, so they can get together to ensure that those suppliers who account for much of the scope 3 emissions, that they are also designing their activities with sustainability in mind. And they can come together in a way that in the past we haven't seen happening, but we are now seeing it in order to try and reduce that carbon footprint.
Yeah, very interesting here because, as you said, Karen, I have an example, from the industry. Imagine you are in the pharmaceutical industry, right? So you try to avoid cross-contamination, right, for example. So in that case, some practices have been implemented in process to use, for example, single-use material, right? So how can the current industry implement new sustainable practices and align them with those requirements of cross-contamination, or sometimes with the new regulatory pressures, new directives, and with compliance at the end? How can we do that?
I think it is a real challenge, because you have to, if you're making a new drug, you have to take a decision up front as to what's going to go into that drug, what chemistry you're using, all of the things that you're going to do in the manufacturing process to deliver that. And some of those things, if you change them, could end up contaminating the original concept for it. So it is very challenging how you can change things in product, but you can start with that. Sustainability by design is the phrase often used, using green chemistry, etc. I've always thought there's a conundrum on this single use, because a lot of laboratories are using single use products, largely driven by concerns over cross-contamination. But actually, they are contaminating the planet by using lots of single-use plastics.
That's right.
And we don't need to use all of those that we have done, because we can use autoclaves and other approaches to cleaning flasks and everything else that are in use without them needing to be single-use plastics. But it's that single-use movement, largely due to things like CJD and that type of contamination. But now we're seeing the end result of that, which is mountains of plastics. So again, getting that mindset changed and adopting new ways of actually doing things is key.
Yeah, absolutely. It happens the same with packaging, right? So there are many packaging that uses plastic. So maybe the industry needs to think out of the box to find new ways to use new materials that also avoid contamination, but also prevent degradation of products. So that there's a lot of work to do here, but with the new products. But what about the current products? You know that investigation takes a lot of time, no less than before, because we can use artificial intelligence for sure, right? But obviously, once the product gets to the patient, a lot of clinical studies are needed, a lot of time and resources. So I think challenge here is how to change current practices with the current products, right?
Yeah, I think what Karen said is, understanding whether the alternative is better or worse than what you previously had, right?
Yeah.
And I know we're talking about life sciences, but I can't think of a better example. But if you think about electric cars, yes, having an electric car means you're contributing to a better planet, but many people who have electric cars don't really understand how those batteries are made and how much damage that does to the planet to put that battery in your car, right? So that's one example. So it's like you can't just look at one side and say, yes, I'm doing this and this is helping the planet. It's looking at both sides of the equation and understanding what the total effort is, whether that's helping the bigger cause.
Yeah, I think we have to help people shift their mindsets about this sustainability piece. About all of this actually, but once the mind is shifted, the communal mind, then innovation will happen. People will start going, how are we going to get around this? And they'll presumably use technology to help them as well. So, I mean, it's all so interrelated, but we have to get the thinking to change first so that the thinking can then expand and figure out solutions. That's what I think.
And there is that conundrum that's presented by the actual AI itself and the storage and cloud storage of data, which itself uses a lot of energy. So at least there's an awareness of that, and there is a lot of attention trying to reduce the energy consumption of data centers. But for every step forward, there's a little bit of a step back. Hopefully not as big, but you still got to bear, as Harsh says, all these different angles in mind.
Yeah, finding the balance and moving forward. Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. So yeah, I think this discussion is has been really interesting. So we have discussed about sustainability as one of the main pillars, resiliency, and also about human centricity. So how do you envision um, Industry 5.0 in the future? Do you think this is a current practice now, or maybe we should start about that, and then are you envisioning applying this when we have more robust technology? I don't know, when we have implemented uh, yeah or reduced the use of I don't know, the old practices right in the future. How do you envision the implementation of Industry 5.0 in the industry?
I think it's sort of coming along on its own a little bit. I think there's sometimes a danger of calling something Industry 5.0. I think most people don't even know what Industry 4.0 is yet, right? So
Mhm.
by labeling it, it almost makes it a little bit. It kind of puts a little wall up and makes people go, eh. So it's almost like we have to talk about it, maybe not using that term, but just using all the concepts, so that, because that's the point. We want people to be applying the concepts. We don't care what they call it ultimately, right? So I think that the way we talk about it, if we can sort of like take the, not mystery, but take the whatever, just get rid of that jargon a little bit and just help people understand why we're doing this, what it's about, how it's good for mankind, and how we can use it, uh, in our daily life, really, like helping people see its real relevance to what they do tomorrow at work.
I thought it was really interesting that you started with, you'd looked for a definition of Industry 5.0 and you started with that, Leslie, because I had to search to find out what it actually was, what it was defined as. And I think there are still different definitions out there. But what was interesting for me is in all the research that I do on a regular basis, I see very little, if any, reference within life sciences, and almost none at all in healthcare, to Industry 4.0, never mind Industry 5.0, but certainly no mention of it. And I've just been doing a series of predictions, and I tried to weave in a couple of times Industry 5.0 where I thought it was relevant, to see if anyone picks up on it, because, as I say, I just don't see it mentioned very much at all.
Great. So yeah, anything to add here? Yeah, Leslie.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that the most exciting part is this is applies to life sciences and it applies to all other industries. That more and more we're seeing. Let's forget about Industry 5.0 or 4.0. What's really happening is that technology and analyzing data points is becoming less optional and more necessary for you to be better at your job. This is happening everywhere. This is happening to athletes who are throwing a football on the field. This is happening to all other industries and also to life sciences. And as professionals who are already in the industry or who are maybe in universities doing their masters and PhD, looking to build a career in life sciences in the next 10 years, they have to embrace this. They have to accept it. It's not optional. It's just that how can they grow? What skills can they learn? And that's gonna separate them. And yes, at some point in time, their employers and their organizations will give them that training materials. It's not there yet. This is happening now. We are talking with our insights and bringing it here. So we're sharing what we know, and more such discussions are happening in other forums and conferences and whatnot. So it's an exciting time for the new generation that's coming in, because they are the ones that are going to be using technology and data in ways that I never thought possible.
That's right. Okay, yes, as we are reaching the end of the discussion, yeah, Karen and and Leslie, do you have anything to add for our audience about Industry 5.0?
I
Anything to
would
add
just add
they
to
can
what
take?
I would add to what Harsh just said, in that, you know, the AI slash Gen AI. We haven't talked about generative AI really, but that genie is out of the bottle, and it's available and is going to be used, and therefore it's incumbent on employers, but academia, everybody, to educate their workforce to be able to use it in the best way possible, for the good, ultimately, of mankind.
That's the perfect ending. There's nothing I can add to that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have to embrace new technology,
Yeah.
and obviously for the sake of our planet and also for our people. So this is why human centricity is a main pillar here. Okay, so thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for your participating in this discussion. It has been really interesting. I hope that our audience is really happy with that. Thank you very much for your insights, Leslie, Karen, and Harsh. I think we have great ideas here for our industry, and let's see what happens in the future. So thank you, and see you in next discussions if we have the opportunity.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angel, Harsh, Karen, and Leslie, for this incredible discussion. And now we will move forward to our next talk of this Smart Quality Summit. We are now going into our final session of the day. And for this, we have prepared a roundtable with some of our customers who will share their experiences on this new smart quality implementation, how this has helped them, how working with SciLife has helped their organizations grow and improve. So, Angel, when